On a daily, we as Nigerians get to see how life gets to treat us as a people, as a people destined for for doom, thanks to the thanks to the quality of leaders we've come to have and the level of followership we too have come to have come to portray in this short period of time. Within the space of what has come to be called Nigeria, the realities that we have faced are enormous, and we must be very keen at seeing to it that we get to change our situation, that we get to change the way we currently are. If not, as it has been predicted, we are heading towards doom. These things are inevitable. As chaotic as the world is and the whole idea of faith is, it bears asking the question, are we going to continue doing what we're doing and expect a different result? The answer is no. We're going to continue to get results that align with what we get to do rather than going that path. Why don't we really look at the ways of trying to champion our own course, our own life down here, geared towards the right direction? It is what we ought to do. It is what we should be doing. It is a necessity if we must go far. But the thing we've not really given the necessary attention it deserves, and a thing we would continue to talk about until we take necessary action. And the actions I talk about here are actions geared towards responsibility, actions geared towards beating our chests and saying, we are not beyond redemption. We are not the first to have been in such situation, and we mustn't wait until we become the last. Because it is as though we are waiting earnestly to see to it that we become the last to want to ordinarily seek change. Our leaders get to do things that are so despicable, and yet we almost say nothing. It begs the question, for how long are we going to continue in these circles? To my greatest shock and surprise, a government came with the whole idea of change in 2015, promising heaven and earth, promising us all the beauties in this world. And a whole lot of persons jumped behind the back of such change. Change promised and proposed by a man who left the country as a head of state more than 30 years later, nothing written, no self improvement, just numerous elections and numerous protests and lots of court cases, coming back in 2014 and shouting change. And we accepted change. But then, in the first 4 years of his rulership and lack of leadership, we saw Nigeria descend into chaos, and it was very, very catastrophic. And we did almost nothing. And on the second phase of his election into office, it was a thing ordinarily that we shouldn't even have thought of voting for him in the second place, or rather selecting him or him forcing himself down our throat. But we found Muhammadu Buhari doing that and serving 8 years. But then another guy came under the same party and screaming the same stuff. I'm going to change this, I'm going to change this, that the past government has been corrupt. And one question I kept asking myself was, isn't this guy from the same party who sold us the same idea and sold us the same candidate and asked us to endorse such candidacy? But then we went ahead, headlong, we voted for, oh, he forced his way into office, and now we're having the current president, and nothing has really changed. And as though we're not supposed to complain or we are okay with whatever is happening. I looked at the APC um, gubernatorial campaigns for the Edo elections, and I was like, are these Nigerians really hungry? Are they really thinking, because the crowd, whether paid for or whatsoever, was largely well attended, and you have to say that because evidence are there that they had serious crowding. But what baffles me is they went on to win the elections in the state, and as we all know, Edo elections almost pre-shadows what gets to happen in the elections in the coming years. And as the results were being read, and I was like, come on, come on. But then I remembered democracy thrives for the bad crop of politicians on ignorance on the people, ability to use rhetorics and capture the minds and hearts of people with lots of falsehood and with lots of things you think their minds want to get fed with. And so it went. As Edo, so as Nigeria, as Edo, so as a whole lot of countries, not peculiar to Nigeria. The US elections are coming very soon. We have Vice President Kamala Harris getting to tell us that she's going to change the government. A government upon which you at the moment are currently a part of. Same thing Tinubu tried to do with Buhari. Same thing, no old story. If you vote me in as president, just maybe I will retract my step and want to begin to do things in the right direction, geared towards the right reason, for the right purpose. Just maybe. But until then, we continue to look at the leadership structures in Nigeria. And one of the things I get to observe is the lack of ideas, that get to guide our leaders in modern times, in the times we get to find ourselves. I barely can find a difference, just like in George Orwell's book, where it says there was a gaze between the man and between the animal, between the man, between the animal, and I couldn't find any difference. So also is our case, so also is our situation, so also is our reality. I look at this party, I look at the next party, I look at this party, I look at the other party, and I tell you for free, I barely can find any difference. I barely can see any reason to believe that they're actually governed by ideas, because where are the ideas? Where are the ideas? Where are the ideas? I will build roads for you. I would empower your women. I would build boreholes for you. I would revamp education. These are the basic things they get to talk about. But then themselves are not even educated, neither are they even well exposed to even start making such outrageous promises. And yet it has not stopped. Ever since I was a little boy, when Mature started contesting for elections, Mature was our neighbor back then in Panya, growing up, and he contested a whole lot, and he failed. He had a great sense of decency in him to the extent that I knew him, but he kept on failing to guys who were ready to do lots of biddings and put lots of money. But at what point is this going to change? At what point are we going to tell ourselves that, our politicians, our politicians are messing up with us? Our politicians are not doing actually what they're meant to do. And they are selling us things we ordinarily don't need. They are selling us commodities we shouldn't keep to ourselves. They're selling us things that we don't even need to buy. Unnecessary merchandise. And so they distract us with our many problems and weaponize poverty and weaponize hate and weaponize tribalism and weaponize our ethnicities, and they get to put us in these boxes and keep us busy in a circus, while they as emperors get to entertain themselves with the wealth and goods of the people. And we see it on every front of our lives. We see their dishonesty and their greed in how easy it is for them to change political parties because they barely can actually tell you the ideas of this party as opposed to the other party. So what do? They just switch parties, they just change parties, they just do things they ordinarily want to do because you know what? What do you want to do? What are you going to do to us? You don't even know yourself so well to to want to even start knowing what you are going to demand of them. At least so they believe. They believe you don't know what it takes to govern yourself or to direct your life or to lead your life in the right course. That is why you come to them and you put them in office, or that's why they put themselves in office and they believe you can do nothing. That is why we see corruption growing at the current rate it is growing. That is why we see corruption alongside banditry working hand in hand. That is why we see corruption in our universities. That is why you see corruption in our hospitals. You see corruption in our financial sector. You see corruption when you fly our roads and when you fly our planes and when you use the few trains we have working and when you stand and stare at railway tracks that have not seen trains nor even trams get to pass them by for the last 50, 60 years. That is why you see people building houses on rail tracks because people have waited for the train too long and it has not come. That is why you see people comparing the fact that we were better off when we were colonized than now. Because to a great extent, you want to believe that particular narrative, you want to believe that particular story, no matter how truthful or no matter how deceitful it gets to appear to you, or no matter how sad such assertion can be in response and in relation to the stark reality of the changes brought about by colonialism. But then you get to see, and for sympathy's sake, even, that these persons are to a great extent right. Roads were built, bridges were constructed. The Indonesians owed their colonizers one thing, the ability to connect one of their longest bridges to their colonizers. And you think they accepted that they couldn't ordinarily have done on their own without the aid of these guys coming down their way. Whatever that is, we cannot take away the fact that these persons, despite the barbaric situations and the realities that were evident in colonialism as at the time, there was a sense of decency in administration, not a sense of decency, or let me not use decency because decency is too good a word to get to ascribe with colonialism. There was a sense of order from one office to the next, from one board to the next board, and persons got employed for whatsoever reasons you want to argue down there. We keep on talking about what Europe did to Africa, but we don't look at our leaders and see what they are doing to us. It is so disheartening that your own brother, your own sister would get to do what they get to do to you at the moment for reasons you cannot understand, for reasons I cannot understand, because I cannot fathom the gross injustice meted on our people by our own brothers and sisters in relation and in connection to their partners abroad. I cannot understand why somebody wants to be a leader, which demands you to be a servant, and right about the time you were ordinarily supposed to be a servant, you turn around and become not just a leader, you become a ruler. You become everything you are ordinarily not supposed to become. You become vain, you become proud, you become arrogant, you become idiotic, you become stupid, you become heartless, you become shameless, you become all the bad things you ordinarily were supposed to kick against. You become corrupt. You become insecure in yourself. You become schizophrenic. You become inhuman to the human conditions of your own people. For what is the point of applying for a job if not to see to it that that company gets better? What is the point for taking up roles or wanting to run a degree or a research project or become a PhD candidate or become a professor if not to advance knowledge in such fields and also get to better understand things for yourself so that you'll be able to explain to others? What is the importance of wanting to do something if not for the right reason of wanting to actually do that thing, gearing towards the particular goal that is for the betterment of whatsoever you are standing for? But no, that is not the case. We find politicians, politicians back home being as stupid as, being as heartless, being as corrupt as never before. Starting money in houses, cutting away with billions of naira, paying school fees for their kids in, let me call it luxurious schools, not just normal schools, schools that look as though they are up for vacation up until graduation, schools that schools that schools that ordinarily shouldn't be that expensive, but because of the lifestyles of a group of persons and the security they want for their kids and the class they want to instill in their kids and how they want to divide society according to whatsoever they have projected in their head, we see these schools get to exist almost side by side with schools that have no funding, almost side by side with with houses with no running water. For I always ask myself, if a country is seen as a family and the business therein inside such a family is collapsing and is going through a difficult phase, wouldn't it be reasonable and sensible for such family members who belong to such a family to look for remedies that ordinarily would get to cure or get to see that such situation gets better? Of course, you want to expect that. They look around, they call auditors to check their accounting, they call experts to get to look at their situations and get to see what is currently wrong with our business. What can we do to get to better our business? What can we do to get to improve our lives down here? What can we do to see to it that things work out for our business and our family? And then wait for answers. But no, find our politicians getting to tell themselves that they're not part of the family or the concerns of the family are not theirs. Because if a country belongs to everybody and everybody is a member and the country is actually sick, and if experts have given diagnosis and have given their observations on how to go forward, and it demands that at least loans be taken and loans be provided to get to better the situation of our current reality as a family, and the loans were indeed acquired, all of a sudden some family members decide to begin to share from such amount of money or to begin to divide what they will now call spoils and go clubbing and buy exotic cars and do things outside the concerns of we actually seeing to it that we fix the problem. What do you think the rest of the family members are going to do? Or how do you think those persons are going to reflect? Stupid, right? But that's the reality. That is what we see our leaders do. We see our leaders cut away with our loans, a common phenomenon done by almost all countries, if not all countries in the world. Not even the US is free from debt, but it is what they get to use this debt for that really counts and really matters. You don't just take money because you have the ability and opportunity to sign contracts and sign deals and stand there on behalf of the people in a democracy that barely functions. And after signing such deals, you just go on a spending spree. All of a sudden, we see people become rich overnight as politicians from from being from being just normal guys on the streets, cutting and grabbing political offices, to all of a sudden becoming wealthy and becoming stupendously rich overnight. How they do this, I don't know. But at least we all know they embezzle funds from the people. Your money, my money, money meant to better your life, money meant to circulate, money meant to go around for everybody to get busy and to do business, money meant to prevent people from becoming Yahoo boys, money meant to prevent people from becoming hookup babes and hookup guys, money meant to prevent people from being irresponsible and criminally minded and criminally oriented and corrupt. All these are what we get to see in the hands of our politicians, that we get to see in the hands of those who now govern our country, in the hands of those who we now call leaders, who are actually rulers. Money is meant to see that kids get to go to school and go to school well. Money meant to see that the agricultural sector gets to be boomed and get to be on track with the 21st century, and the advances in technology is being used to see to it that farming gets to actually meet the needs of the people before actually talking about the want. Money is meant to invest in infrastructures like libraries for students to get to gear their creativities, to get to gear their creativity across boards. Money meant to fund education as cheap as possible. Money meant to build libraries in universities and pay professors well to do their jobs without asking students for bribes and loans and incentives, sexually oriented or whatsoever that happens in our universities that seem to be so despicable. These are the monies we get to see our leaders get to cut away with, starched in houses, in Wuse, in Victoria Island, in Banana Island, in buildings that ordinarily they don't get to live in, born out of insecurity. Your funds, my funds, funds meant to better our lives. These are the things we get to see our leaders get to do to us. And they get to do these things to us in ways that we cannot even imagine, in so terrible ways, in so annoying ways. I tell you for free. It is disturbing. It is disturbing to say the least. And we must, as a people, begin to look at how to better our lives. We as a people need to begin to ask ourselves real questions. For how long are we going to be quiet? Watching these old guys get to do what they do, watching these unqualified guys get to be politicians, getting to project themselves on our faces, on our screens, and causing us national and international embarrassment. For how long are we going to tell ourselves that, you know what, I need to begin to take the news serious, I need to begin to take politics serious, I need to begin to listen to the news, I need to begin to listen to David Hunde, I need to begin to look in between the lines of what Very Dark Man is saying, I need to begin to look in between the rage and the anger you see in someone like Sheun Kutin. I need to begin to listen to Dele Farotimi and his brokers every time I get to see them pop up. I need to begin to invest in what can make our country better, in what can make our lives as a people better, in what can make our society better, in what can make us grow. That I need to begin to invest in my personal sense of education, be it formal or informal. The most important thing is to get educated, be certified or not. Reading the news, not expecting to go out and brag and argue with people, but reading the news and understanding the times and the lives that you live around and in relation to. These are the things we must do, because just like the argument for the devil in Christian or in religious circles get to hold, The devil has played his finest trick on us. And what's that trick? Telling us that indeed he doesn't exist. And if he doesn't exist and people don't get to believe and see to it that he exists, he ceases to exist as well as going about his daily activities and going about his daily plans. Our problems are not going to go away if we continue like this. Our problems are just going to multiply. They will just become more and more larger than we can actually think of. We would need to build a strong base. A strong base, my people. We will need to erect structures that will get to see to it that our lives down here remains a thing worth living. Come to mean a thing we ordinarily should be looking up for, should be looking out for. Because if we don't do this, we deceive ourselves. If we don't tell ourselves the gospel truth, if we don't look ourselves in the eyes and say to ourselves, you know what? We are drowning and we are going down. Not just to scroll on phones and listen to music and fall in love and all that, but in what circumstances are we falling in love? In what situations are we going to fall in love and do all these things we want to really do? Education gets to bear the brunt for this, and education comes as a handy solution. And what is education? What is education to you? Are you educated? Am I educated? Are we as a people really educated? Or we just tell ourselves that we are educated and console ourselves? Or we just tell ourselves that we are fine and we console ourselves with that? Or we are indeed really, really educated? Because it matters going forward for you to know how bad your situation is. Because indeed you are being killed. And you're being killed for reasons not beyond your grasp. I am being killed and my life being shortened not beyond my grasp as a person. We know the things that get to affect our lives. We know the things that get to put us and keep us in these situations. But sometimes we just want to look the other side. We just want to turn the other cheek and do as though we don't know what is going on. We don't know what is happening. And do as though we don't want to really pay keen attention to the daily realities that get to stare us in our eyes. The reality that we are badly governed and we follow badly. The reality that our roads are bad. Our transportation systems are archaic, and our town planning systems are poor, are poorly done. Our sewage systems, if we have any, don't function. That our rivers have even been barely exploited beyond catching fishes and not even getting to know what actually is in such bodies. That our forests and the different stuff that make up the entire forestry has not really been exploited to the level we ordinarily have to do, beyond the falling of timbers and beyond the manual cultivation of crops and yams and all that for either subsistence purpose or for cash prices, for the sake of cash and for business. And if for business, how well have we done so? And if for consumption still, how well have we gone? It is to all of these I get to talk about the need to re-educate ourselves and ask ourselves the right question. When a politician comes and says, I'm going to give you road, ask him, why has it taken so long? And why is it road you are promising me? And how long is the road going to last? And how long is our situation going to continue like this? And for how long are our children going to wait for your empowerment and your end power and what I don't even understand? When you can actually fix the problem and let things get to be the way they get to be. But Mind you, they won't fix it. If they fix it, they go out of business. If they fix it, there will be no need. If they get to train your children in school, there will be no need. If they get to fix your lives, there will be no need for them to be there. They will not have any sense of relevance. And so the likes of Akpabio continues to be in our political space. The likes of Bayo Nonoga, the likes of Chichibu, our president, they continue to look at us and stare us in the face and put themselves on our screens and fill our subconscious with their importance and ask us to continually tell them, President, please, President, please, I beg, come to our rescue. President, I beg, come to our rescue. We don't need that. We elected these people in office to get to solve our problems. We employed them. They are employers. But no, that is not the case. No, that is not what we do. We allow ourselves to be rude and to be rude badly. And everybody is so traumatized and so scared of speaking up and speaking out. Everybody is so afraid, I don't want anything to happen to me. But yet we still die. Fela will say, I know one Peme, I know one die. But what happens? Even Fela himself is dead. What happened to your father? He's dead. What happened to your grandfather? He's either dead or old somewhere, hanging on life with almost no prospects. Because we live all in a very, very insecure country. Today you are the director of health in charge of NHIS. Tomorrow you find yourself so sick that you can't even access basic health with your money, not even with an insurance. Today you find yourself as the DG of a government parastatal, and tomorrow you find yourself in need. And the list goes on. The list goes on and goes on and goes on. And sometimes we are barely moved. We have these conversations in our small talks, and we have these discussions where we get to talk about this in our little gatherings and places like this. But in the grand scheme of things, what do we do? Yeah, we get to listen to Chinua Achebe in his wonderful book, The Trouble with Nigeria, and we get to listen to what he gets to tell us about our situation. This book was written in the 80s, and it still gets to tell us our problems as Africans, as Nigerians, and how do we want to go? How do we want to be governed? How do we want to see ourselves led? How do we want to move forward? We see ourselves almost heading nowhere. We see ourselves hanging, telling ourselves that our lives will be better, telling ourselves that things are going to get better for us, hoping on God and asking the wrong questions and praying for the wrong reasons. We do this every time. We do this every time and we expect different results. We do this every time and we want a way out. But how do you get a way out of a situation where you're not even ready to look at the problems? How do you want to get out of a situation where you don't even know the problems, or you're not even ready enough to actually get out? In the very beginning of his work, he states it clearly. The trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. There's nothing basically wrong with the Nigerian character. There's nothing wrong with the Nigerian land or climate or water or air or anything else. The Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or inability of its leaders to rise to the responsibility, to the challenge of personal example, which are the hallmarks of true leadership. On the morning after Murtala Mohammed seized power in July 1975, public servants in Lagos were found on seats at 7:30 in the morning. Even the go-slow traffic that had defeated every solution and defied every regime vanished overnight from the streets. Why? The new ruler's reputation for ruthlessness was sufficient to transform in the course of only one night the style and habit of Nigeria's unruly capital. That the character of one man could establish that quantum change in a people's social behavior was nothing less than miraculous. But it shows that social miracles can happen. We know at last that that transformation was short-lived. It had begun to fade even before the tragic assassination of Murtala Mohammed. In the final analysis, a leader's no-nonsense reputation might induce a favorable climate, but in order to effect lasting change, it must be followed up with a radical program of social and economic reorganization, or at least a well-conceived and consistent agenda of reform, which Nigeria stood and stands in dire need of. I am not here recommending ruthlessness as a necessary qualification for Nigerian leadership. Quite on the contrary, what I am saying is that Nigeria is not beyond change. I am saying that Nigeria can change today if she discovers leaders who have the will, the ability, and the vision. Such people are rare in any time or space. But it is the duty of enlightened citizens to lead the way in their discovery and to create an atmosphere conducive to their emergence. If this conscious effort is not made, good leaders, like good money, will be driven out by bad. Wherever two Nigerians meet, their conversation will sooner or later slide into a litany of national deficiencies. The trouble with Nigeria has become the subject of small talk in much the same way as the weather is for the English. But there is a greater danger in consigning a life and death issue to the daily routine of small talk. No one can do much about the weather. We must accept it and live with or under it. But national bad habits are a different matter. We resign ourselves to them at our own peril. Nigeria has many thoughtful men and women of conscience, a large number of talented people. Why is it then that all these patriots make so little impact on the life of our nation? Why is it that our corruption, gross iniquity, our noisy vulgarity, our selfishness, our ineptitude seem so much stronger than the good influences at work in our society? Why do the good among us seem so helpless while the worst are full of vile energy? I believe that Nigeria is a nation favored by providence. I believe there are individuals as well as nations who, on account of peculiar gifts and circumstances, are commandeered by history to facilitate mankind's achievement. Nigeria is such a nation. The vast human and material wealth with which she is endowed bestows on her a role in Africa and the world which no one else can assume or fulfill. The fear that should nightly haunt our leaders, but does not, is that they may already have betrayed irretrievably Nigeria's high destiny. The countless billions that a generous providence poured into our national coffers in the last years would have been enough to launch this nation into the middle rank of developed nations and transformed the lives of our poor and needy. But what have we done with it? Stolen and salted away by people in power and their accomplices, squandered in uncontrolled importation of all kinds of useless consumer merchandise from every corner of the globe, embezzled through inflated contracts to an increasing army of party loyalists who have neither the desire nor the competence to execute their contracts. Consumed in the escalating salaries of a grossly overstaffed and unproductive public service. And so, ad infinitum. Does it ever worry us that history, which neither personal wealth nor power can preempt, will pass terrible judgment on us, pronounce anathema on our names when we have accomplished our betrayers and passed on? We have lost the 20th century. Are we bent on seeing that our children also lose the 21st? God forbid. That was a man speaking in the 80s. And the concerns are still valid. That is how you get to know how bad our situation as a people is currently. All the things Achebe pointed out in his work are the things we get to see before us, before our very before. There's nothing that has changed. There's nothing that has changed. He will go on in his work to talk about tribalism, mediocrity, our style of leadership, the things we get to do, our level of corruption, the self-image, the Igbo problem, reflecting on the life and times of Aminu Kanu, a man that really endeared him, and not just him, endeared many Nigerians. It is sad that we don't see these problems. It is sad that we don't see our realities from this perspective. It is very sad. And it has a whole lot to do with the way we've come to educate ourselves. What do our kids get to learn when they go to school? What do they learn when they are in classrooms? What are they taught from the basics up until their university education? What are they taught? Are they taught to think as free humans? Are they taught to use their rationality as how it gets to lead them? Or they are taught to stifle their dreams and submit to their teachers and not ask questions and not even dream of becoming scientists or not even dream of becoming novelists? Because how do they do this when they don't even have labs to perform practicals? When they don't even have libraries to get to see the vast area and land explored by literature? When they don't even get to read books and get to have light, electricity at home that get to power lights and get to give them a chance of comfort in their houses. How do you want them to do this when their parents can barely provide 2 square meals for them, talk more of buying books for them? How do you want to talk about education and how we get to go and how we can champion ourselves when there's no philosophy guiding us as a country? Because if there is any, I want to know, what is the philosophy guiding Nigeria? What is the philosophy guiding the continent of Africa? What is even the philosophy guiding the world? Stupidity, being lousy, having arguments that have no bearing or rational thinking and the likes of that. We can do better, but we don't. Because we don't want to. Or we want to, but we don't allow ourselves a chance of being guided towards the right path, of being given the right decisions, or being given the right things to get to do, to get to see that we place ourselves in the right direction. And so we continue to stifle ourselves and stifle our dreams and stifle our purpose because of how we are now complaining and talking about our small talks. We cannot resign our small talks to small talks alone. We do ourselves a great disfavor. We have to be educated. And it starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with your father, it starts with my father. My dad is late. It starts with us. If you go to our universities, you find corruption being practiced on a scale you would never believe can actually be done. But what I get to ask myself always is, parents pay school fees for their children to go to school. And their children now go to school, and parents get to fund their school life, fund their accommodations, and fund their their nutritional needs and their social needs and their basic amenities for them to go to school to learn. These lecturers don't come to class. These lecturers, some of them don't know how to teach or don't even have the time enough to teach because either they are so busy with a whole lot of other things and writing papers, and they forget to do what they are meant to do. And uh, and they hope that when we graduate from these schools, we would amount to something. Our parents hope that we will amount to something after this long array of spending. But what happens? We find ourselves we find ourselves in very, very difficult corners and very difficult situations whereby it's difficult for me to say, whereby we don't get the services for what we pay for in schools, whereby lecturers still demand that we pay monies through our course reps and our class reps so that he or she would get to pass us or pass our children. I never went to a Nigerian public school, public university. And parents are still called to send this money to the awards. Parents are still called to pay such bribes their to the lecturers of their own students for them to be passed for courses they were never taught and for services never rendered and for money being paid to the professors, no matter how tiny. You cannot justify the corruption that goes down there. And you see this every day. You see how students get traumatized. And when students are meant to pay this amount of money, they lose a sense of they lose a sense of readership. They lose the need to get to sit down and study. Because why do I have to study for a course where I can comfortably for a course where I can comfortably sort out and then give the lecturer money and not even be sure of an A, or give the lecturer whatever incentive he or she wants, so he just leaves me alone and allow me to rest and be in peace? Why can't I just do that and then get my sanity and get my peace? These are the questions most persons get to ask themselves. And so we find students in a university environment traumatized and not given the necessary education needed for them to move into the workspace, into the society back. Because to a great extent, we have been told school is a scam, school is a scam. It is because of how we have come to see schooling and university educations and all that. The open AI a whole lot of persons talk about in recent times, they were built from theoretical assumptions postulated in university labs and university libraries and in books and in articles written by different persons that may never come to be accredited or recognized for their efforts as to where we are. Alan Turing is long dead, and such imagination of his as far back as the 40s and 50s through the 90s into the 2000s and where we are at the moment stands as a testament to the creative power of the mind and the way it gets to work and how it gets to function. And so back to where we started from, back to how we started. What can we do to better our lives? The way out is through. We have to look at ourselves and look at our problems and look at our situations and tell ourselves these problems are not particularly peculiar to us, but we can get out. That we are not meant to be just tribal beings attached to the tribe, because when people can no longer find peace and solace and comfort in the crowd, they fall back to their families. They fall back to They fall back to the tribe, and it can be used. It can be used for different purposes and for different reasons, and in varying ways, and for varying reasons, and for bad reasons as well as for good reasons. But even when you fall back to the tribe, you find that it's a smaller unit as opposed to the national identity or everybody should ordinarily carry and carry well. And so Ojukwu will talk about giving up the tribe to a great extent for the national identity to be actually fashioned and formed. It breaks me that we still allow ourselves to be deceived, that we are so different. We allow ourselves to be deceived that we aren't the same. We aren't the same people. We are the same people. We are the same people. We share the same problems. We come from the same loins. We come from poverty. We come from corruption. We come from all the bad things that get to happen to us. We come from where we come from. And Dike Chukwumerije, in his poems, you will find a whole lot of solace. He wrote "The Revolution Has No Tribe" many years ago, but that particular work has come to mean a whole lot of things to a whole lot of persons, because the revolution indeed has no tribe. The revolution has no tribe. The revolution has no tribe. Dike maintains, do you not know that poverty is not an German? He will not spare the rest of us and afflict only the Ishan. He will step over the river and come across the border. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do you not know that corruption is not from Nekede? He will not hear that Ife had no dealings with Mother Keke. He will wake up all of our children at night with hunger. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do you not know that HIV and AIDS is not Kanuri? He will not select his victims and kill only the Fulani. He will set the land ablaze from the Delta to the Sahara. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do you not know that our enemies have no faces? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say I am an Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say I am an Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not prevent us from perishing together. So when the drum sounds, let everybody answer. Let everybody answer. Let everybody answer. Let everybody answer. Because if everybody begins to answer to the beating drum of the community, to the beating drum of our current reality, there's no way our life will continue to be the way our life is at the moment. But until we do that, until we look at our lives from that particular perspective, I don't know where we are heading. I don't know how we are going to fare. I don't know how it's going to be for us. But I know we will not succeed the current way we are going. I know we will not make much progress the way we are going as a people at the moment. Because as the drum continues to sound, we aren't paying attention. We are responding to the beats that get to be played and the sounds that get to emanate from this. We just sit down and listen to ourselves. Because as the drum continues to sound, we barely answer. As the drum continues to sound, we barely listen to ourselves and we barely tell ourselves the truths of our situation, the truth of our condition as a people in need of help, a people in need of help, a people in need of help, a people in need of saving, a people in need of a whole lot of things we've refused to tell ourselves we need, a people dying, but dying, not concerned, not struggling, a people resigned to the traumas and the tortures of many years made possible by our leaders, a people that suffer under the bludgeonings of chance and allow ourselves to be governed by people who don't have us at heart. And so year in, year out, we see people protesting from different factions and all that with no unity of purpose, with no unity of mind. We have been divided so badly than is necessary. And we don't want to see this. And we don't want to see to it that we indeed have actually been divided badly. That we indeed have actually been led astray. That we as a people need help. That we as a people need to focus. And we must focus if we want to be taken seriously. So when the drums sound, I pray you answer. When it sounds, I pray myself gets to answer. And to say when it sounds is an irony because it has been sounding and it is still sounding and it is going to continue to sound. It is left for you and I to answer. It is left for you and I to do the necessary things and to do the things we ought to do. It is left for you and I, as we started, to be responsible enough to tell ourselves that we have problems. Responsible enough to point out our problems and say, we must solve this if we want to succeed. We must make progress if we must grow. Because as the drum continues to sound, we don't pay attention. We allow things to chance and it's not good. The drums are sounding. I pray we answer. I am Birim Bobin Mecca. I'm your brother. If you like this video and you've watched up until this point, please do like, share, and comment. See you next time.